Senator King presses Mr. Hegseth, asking why we would cling to honoring traitors. He's not erasing history. He's demanding accountability in how we tell it. History isn't erased because a military base no longer bears the name of a Confederate general. The Civil War is still taught, the Confederacy is still studied, museums still exist. What changes is who we, today, uplift as role models and symbols for service members who swear loyalty to this country, not to a rebellion against it.
Mr. Secretary, I'm somewhat puzzled. I grew up in Virginia where Robert E. Lee was revered. I think when I was a kid, his birthday was a school holiday. But as I grew older and learned more about American history, I learned that he fit the classic definition of a traitor. He took up arms against his country. He broke his oath as a member of the United States Army, which he took upon entering his career at West Point. Why are you going through these incredible gymnastics, finding current soldiers or other soldiers to rename? And you slipped a minute ago. You said we're returning these bases to their original names. Robert E. Lee, leading general of the Confederacy, Pickett, the other names. Why are you doing this? I don't understand what the motivation is to rename bases for people who took up arms against their country on behalf of slavery. What possible motivation can there be for this? Who is telling you to do this? Who is urging you to do this?
Senator, the veterans and service members across the country who have deployed from Fort Bragg or Fort Benning or Fort Hood or Fort Pickett, there's a legacy, there's a connection to those bases and to those places, to what they trained for there, what they did for, and what they came home back to. That matters to them. Ask enough of them, as I do, all the time, before and later. And we recognize the service of those who were put into the replacement. No one's disputing that. I would never dispute that. What we're looking at is erasing history, erasing names, erasing base names that service members are tied to. Talk to people that serve at Bragg. Ask people that serve at Fort Bragg or Fort Benning if they like the fact that the names have been returned. And to a man and to a woman, they will tell you, thank God we're back to Fort Bragg, and thank God we're back. And thankfully, because so many men and women in this country have served, there's a Benning and a Bragg and a Pickett and a Hood that has a Silver Star or a Medal of Honor that we could rename the base to because of the limits of what Congress allowed us to do. So this is something we've been proud to do, something that's important for the morale of the Army, and those communities appreciate that we've returned it back to what it was instead of trying to play this game of erasing names.
We're not erasing history, Mr. Secretary. We're recognizing history and recognizing that mistakes have been made in this country. The greatest of all was the Civil War, where people took up arms against their country on behalf of the institution of slavery. And to continue the practice of recognizing those people and honoring them by the naming of these bases is, I believe, an insult to the people of the United States. Let me talk about the budget. I don't understand why the budget is coming to us in two pieces. Why not give us an honest base budget instead of putting a piece of it in reconciliation? As I understand it, OMB is saying we're going to have a flat defense budget for the next 4 or 5 years. Are we planning reconciliation every year from now on? Why not give us an honest budget telling us what your priorities are, and then we can consider it. This committee always works in a bipartisan basis on a defense budget. We all want to see some increases in the defense budget, and yet you're giving us this this fake, here's a piece of the budget, here's another. You're cutting in the base budget, you're cutting shipbuilding in half and saying, well, we're going to make it up in reconciliation. Are we going to have reconciliation every year, which basically, by the way, puts a significant part, 10 or 15% of the defense budget in an wholly partisan decision-making process, whereas in the history of this committee, it's always been bipartisan. Why are we doing it this way?
Senator, from our view, the budget number 961 meets the requirements and threats that we face. And
that's not the number. The number is 892.6. You're adding reconciliation. That's my whole point. Why not give us a base budget of 961 or whatever the right number is, what you consider the right number, and then we can operate and make our decisions. Why do it in this bifurcated way that really is fooling the American people about what the defense budget is?
We're not trying to fool anybody, sir. It's two bills, one budget. We're working with OMB, and we feel very comfortable with the number of $961 billion.
Why don't you give us a straight-up budget for the Defense Department? That's my question.
Senator, this is a straight-up budget for the Defense Department, and it's a 13% increase over what Joe Biden gave us.
It is a two-part defense budget. Part of it is in reconciliation instead of in the budget that's being presented to this committee. This committee only has a partial review of the budget. I don't understand why we can't have an honest, straightforward budget instead of this son of Oko that you're putting over on us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Angus King is cutting straight to the heart of an issue that too often gets clouded by political spin and revisionist history. The exchange highlights a fundamental question. Who do we as a nation choose to honor?
The veterans
King
and
reminds
service
us of
members
something that
across the
shouldn't be
country
controversial, but somehow
who have
still
deployed
is.
from
Robert
Fort
E. Lee
Bragg
and other
or Fort
Confederate
Benning
generals
or
were
Fort
not
Hood
American
or Fort
heroes.
Pickett.
They were men who took up arms
There's a
against
legacy.
the United States of
There's
America.
a connection
They broke
to
their
those
oath
bases
to defend the Constitution,
and to those places,
and they did so
to what
in
they trained
defense of
for there, what
slavery,
they did
the
for,
very
what they came
institution
home
our
back
nation
to.
would shed
That matters
rivers
to
of
them.
blood to
Ask
abolish.
enough of them, as I do,
That is the
all
truth.
the time,
That
before
is history.
and later.
Think about
and
the
we
soldiers
recognize
training at these
the
bases,
service
black soldiers,
of those
Latino
who were put into the
soldiers,
replacement.
women
No one's
breaking
disputing
barriers,
that. I would never
immigrants who
dispute
earned
that.
citizenship through
What we're
service.
looking at is
What message does
erasing
it send
history,
if the place where they risk their
erasing
lives for
names,
America is
erasing base
named after
names
someone
that
who
service
fought
members
to
are
keep
tied to?
people
Not
Talk to
enslaved?
people that serve at
history,
Bragg.
Senator King is
Ask people that
absolutely
serve
right.
at Fort Bragg or Fort
Continuing to
Benning
honor
if they
Confederates is not
like the
just
fact that the
outdated,
names have been
it's
returned.
insulting.
And to a
Now
man and
notice
to a
how
woman,
Hegseth
they will
frames
tell
his
you,
defense.
thank
He
God we're
talks
back
about
to Fort
erasing
Bragg,
names,
and thank
about
God we're
morale,
back. And
about
thankfully, because
veterans
so
having
many
a
men and women
connection
in
to
this
these
country have
bases.
served,
But let's
there's a
pause
Benning
here.
and a Bragg
That
and a
connection
Pickett and
isn't to the
a
Confederate
Hood
general.
for,
It's
that
to the memory,
has a Silver
the
Star or a
camaraderie,
Medal
the
of Honor
missions.
that we could rename
Fort
the base
Bragg
to
could
because
have
of the
been
limits
called
of what
Fort
Congress
Unity
allowed us
or
to do.
Fort Courage,
So this
and
is something
soldiers
we've
would
been
still
proud to do,
remember the
something
sweat
that's
and
important for the
sacrifice they put in
morale
there.
of the Army,
The names
and those
don't
communities
define their
appreciate
legacy.
that we've
The
returned it
service
back
of the
to what
people
it
does.
was instead of
This
trying
is
to
why
play this
renaming
game
bases isn't
of
about
erasing
rewriting
names.
history.
We're
It's
not
about
erasing
writing a
history,
more honest
Mr.
future.
Secretary.
It's
We're
about ensuring the
recognizing
symbols
history
we elevate
and
reflect the
recognizing that
values we
mistakes have
claim to
been made
hold:
in this
equality,
country.
democracy,
The greatest
unity.
of all was the Civil
Then
War,
the conversation pivots
where
to the
people
defense
took up
budget.
arms against their
Here
country
too,
on
Senator
behalf of the
King is
institution
pointing
of
out
slavery.
something the public
And to
needs to
continue
hear:
the practice of
transparency.
recognizing those
If the
people and
Pentagon's
honoring
budget
them
is truly
by the naming of these
$961 billion,
bases
then
is,
say it
I
plainly.
believe, an insult
Don't
to the people
split
of
it
the
into
United
two
States.
pieces,
Let me talk about
with
the
one
budget.
part shoved into
I don't
reconciliation
understand
where
why
it
the
becomes a
budget
partisan fight.
is coming to
Defense
us
has
in two
historically
pieces.
been
Why not give us
bipartisan.
an honest
Both
base
parties come
budget
together to
instead
make
of
sure the
putting a
military
piece
is
of it in
funded.
recognition-
But
in-
carving
in,
off a chunk of it into
reconciliation?
reconciliation
As I understand
undermines
it,
that
OMB is
tradition
saying we're
and
going to have a flat
obscures the
defense
real
budget for the
numbers
next
from the
4 or
American
5
people.
years.
Why does
Are you
that matter?
planning- are we
Because
planning
when budgets are
reconciliation
hidden in this
every
way,
year
it
from
prevents
now on?
honest
Why not give
debate
us an
about
honest
priorities.
budget
Do
telling
we
us
want
what
to
your
keep pouring
priorities
money
are,
into weapon
and then
systems
we
that don't
can
work?
consider it.
Or
This
do we want
committee
to
always
invest in
works on a
cyber defense,
bipartisan
in
basis
veterans health care,
on the
in
defense
military
budget. We
housing
all
so
wanna
service members'
see some
families don't
increases
live
in
with
the defense
mold and
budget,
broken plumbing?
and yet you're
These are the
giving us this,
questions that get lost when the
this
budget
fake,
isn't clear and
here's a
straightforward.
piece of the budget, here's
Senator
another.
King
You're
is
cutting
doing what
in the
oversight
base
is
budget,
supposed
you're
to
cutting
do,
shipbuilding
forcing
in half
clarity,
and
demanding
saying, well, we're going to make
accountability,
it up in
making sure
reconciliation.
decisions
Are we going to
aren't
have
made in the
reconciliation
shadows.
every year, which
And that's
basically,
something
by the
every
way,
American,
puts
Republican or
a
Democrat, should
significant
support.
part, 10 or 15%
At the end of the day, both
defense
issues in this
budget and then
exchange,
wholly
base
partisan
renaming and budget transparency,
decision-making
come down to
process,
the same
whereas
principle:
in the history of this
honesty.
committee, it's
Be
always been
honest about who we
bipartisan.
honor.
Why are we
Be
doing
honest
it
about
this
how we spend. Only then can we have a military that truly
Senator,
reflects
from our view, the
values
budget
it's
number
sworn to defend.
961 meets
So
the
when you hear
requirements and
debates about
threats that we
so-called
face.
erasing
And
That's
history
not the
or
number.
about
The number
fake
is
budgets, remember this: no
892.6.
one is
You're
erasing
adding
history.
reconciliation.
What's
That's my
really
whole point.
happening is an
Why not
attempt
give
to
us a base
choose
budget
better
of
heroes,
961
tell
or
the
whatever the
truth,
right
and to
number is,
shine
what you
light where
consider the
some
right
would rather
number,
keep things in
and
the
then we
dark.
can operate
And that's where
and
you
make
come
our
in.
decisions.
Pay
Why
attention.
do
Ask
it
the
in
same
this
question
bifurcated
Senator
way
King
that
is
really
asking.
is
Why are we
fooling the
honoring
American
traitors?
people about
Why
what the
isn't
defense
the budget
is?
straightforward? Hold leaders
We're not trying to
accountable for
fool
the
anybody,
answers,
sir. It's two
because the
bills,
more
one
we
budget.
demand
I haven't asked my
We're working
question
with
yet. Why is it
OMB,
being
and
done
we feel
this
very
way?